In this movie, we'll have a look at how you can store points and lines when connected to GPS equipment. I've started up a new project and I'm using the default survey CSV description list. And I'm going to go in here and we're just going to shoot some edge of grass shots. Let's make them edge of gravel shots. So I've set that as my current field description, and you'll notice how that description is already set up to automatically activate Linework. If I didn't want to do that, I could just toggle it off, but I do want to leave it toggled on because I want to store points as we draw our line work. And now we have RTK fix, and we're at our first point, so I'll trigger the first shot. As it's averaging, it's skipping points that don't fit the high tolerance that we currently have set. And now I can store that position, and we'll store it as point 1 with that description. And this just allows me to confirm that I do want to start a figure at this point. Okay, now we'll move on to the next point. Ready? We'll take a shot. Okay, that point has been stored, and you can see that a figure has been begun. Moving on to the next point. Now, before we go on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the tolerance mode so that I can take advantage of a fast store feature that the tolerance modes allow for. So when I go into the control toolbox here, and in this case I'm going to configure the sensor, you'll notice how we have a selection of 3 different tolerance modes. So currently we're set to this fixed tolerance mode, which requires us to average 5 shots and has a fairly high tolerance. I'm just going to edit my float tolerance mode just to show you a few settings. So when I'm in float tolerance mode, it will require only 1 observation to be averaged. It'll still ask for an RTK fixed solution. And further down, I've also got the auto store measure and auto skip measure stat option on. I've also got tolerance override on, which allows me to override any failures in the tolerance mode test. So I'll just set that float profile as my current profile, and so this is going to allow me to continue to work, but I'll be able to measure much more quickly. There, my point's already been stored. Now we're moving on to the next point. And trigger another shot. And so now you can see I've got the option, even though my requirements have failed, I've got the option to store the point regardless, which I think I'm going to do. There, and it's been stored. All right. Now, next is there's going to be an arc, and so to draw an arc, just the first time you measure the arc, what you do is your last point will be assumed to be the beginning of the arc, and then you turn on the center point arc button in order to shoot the midpoint of the arc. And I'll trigger the shot. That's okay. I'll allow it to override. And you can see that a straight line has been drawn, and we've gone back to straight line mode. That's okay. It still knows that we need to draw an arc. So now we're going on to the end of the arc. And we'll trigger one more measurement. And it's stored instantaneously. And now you can see that a curve has been fit on that arc. So I've turned off Linework mode just to make this figure no longer the live figure. And what I'm going to show you now is if I highlight that figure, I can set it to current again so that I can continue drawing, and at this point it's going to draw from where the blue X is. I'd like to switch direction. Notice how I'm at the other end of my figure, so I'll just pick on the switch direction button and close this toolbar, and so now I've got Linework activated, and I'm ready to move on to the next point in this line, and you'll see that we've continued to store points with Linework. And I'll trigger the shot. We'll store position regardless. There we go. So not working highly precisely, but in this case we're just doing rough topo work, so it's not going to matter too much. Okay, and one last figure of doing line work with FieldGenius is I can switch over to the curvy line or spline feature, and here we're going to do a natural boundary in a series of 4 or 5 shots. Here we go. We're going to move on to the next point now. Trigger the shot, and on to the next point. And on to the next point. And we're finished. So I'll just deactivate that figure. And so now you can see on that last section we've got a nice curve fit around all those points. Thanks a lot for your interest in this movie.